All right, so I'll start that now. All right, so one of the big problems we have with the concept of artificial intelligence is what we call the black box problem, right? The black box problem simply refers to ability of AI systems to be able to make decisions that humans cannot be able to interpret the basis for those decisions, right? And this actually necessitates for the need for us to have what we call the AI for good, because sometimes we have our algorithms making decisions that we can't really be able to explain. So this brings up a very wide big subject of core, which we call the AI for good and all of that. So this is a typical example of what happens when we don't understand the decision of our algorithms, right? So we have Tay. I don't know how many of us can remember this robot that was developed by Microsoft, and it got racist. And this is because it's able, the data, it's able to learn from its environment, and a lot of reasons. And it's possible that our algorithm turns out to be something totally different from what we actually intended to be. And this is not only with respect to algorithms like Tay, it also happens in pre-selection algorithms, whereby we send in our resumes or any other pre-selection algorithm or whatever you're trying to pre-select, and we don't necessarily understand how the artificial intelligence comes up with the decision that it does in determining who should be selected or who should not be selected. However, the result actually does show that there is actually disproportional reasons behind that. According to a Harvard report, people from certain background, Black communities and people of color have 45% more chance for getting calls when they remove their backgrounds from their CVs or resumes. So what is our algorithm learning, and why is it that we are having an institutional bias or structure that is systematically removing certain people out from the block? So where does all of this come from? Data source, engineering bias, model exposures, and weightage that actually happens in our modeling. These are some examples of where all of this bias normally comes out from. So this actually pushed me to our project, which is called an all-inclusive AI-based automated selection and matching API. What we want to do with this solution is that we want to create an API that that is actually inclusive in the selection modeling. How does this work, right? So in our data collection process, we ensure that we get different backgrounds is actually captured. And then we do our feature engineering, model training, implementation of the weightage, we deploy, and then the user interface. But the unique thing about our solution is the fact that we, in the source of the data, we capture all the different categories, and also we put a weightage that actually understands the nuances of different backgrounds, which is not actually what happens in these automatic selection processes. The weightage are clear. It's looking for the best without understanding that the best differs, the definition of best differs from certain demographic to certain demography. We want to ensure that this inclusiveness ensures that the result and the output in the whole selection categories understands the different dichotomies that actually explain the nuances of our society. So who should get the job is an example of how my algorithm works here. This guy A, who is from USA and has 5 years experience, someone from Bangladesh, and then someone from the UK, for example, although this person B has a lower experience, our algorithm was able to choose this person because he was able to understand the nuances beyond just experience, but also to the nuances that actually form what best is according to gender, according to certain demography, and it was able to choose person B as the best for this particular job. Who needs our solution? Our API seeks to help developers, companies, startups, organizations, and other stakeholders to come up with optimal selections through their processes and platform. Selections that are inclusive and understand the uniqueness of their candidates. I am Ubi Obu, and with me I'll be working with Daniel Efiom and Blessing. I have experience in artificial intelligence. That's actually what I studied in college, and the subject of bias is actually my core subject when it comes to the issues of artificial intelligence. And I'm working with people who have several experience in software engineering and marketing as well. I would like to entertain questions from here. Thank you.
Awesome. Very on time. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. Yeah, questions for Ubio? Else, I have one. Is it, are you kind of, if I can say it like this, and this is very new terms, like, but are you making kind of are you training your own AI, or is this kind of framework to train AIs?
No, so we are actually building our own platform that actually uses a different algorithm. So the difference is that we already we have a lot of AI systems that are already built, models are already trained for selecting. So the difference is that in our processes, we are going to get a much more dynamic data sources that understand the differences. And also the second aspect comes to where we are doing the weightage. We are going to put different weightage for different, when we are doing the data passing and all of that, we're going to put different weightage for different categories according to according to their strength and different ways. So that's the two angles we are going to be focusing on here. So it's more going to be like an API, open source as
well. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Tommy, please.
Yes, Ubio, how in the programming of this do you be totally inclusive is A, and B, how do you avoid self-bias?
Okay, so let's start from A. How inclusive is the algorithm itself? So in my presentation, I had to first explain to you where the sources of bias actually does come from. And one of the things we actually identified was, one, the data source. Two, was the exposure of that particular data itself. And who is the person that is training the data as well, because all of us, all humans, the engineer has an implicit bias. That's what we all do have. So these are the three things that we are going to be addressing in our training of our data. One is the fact that we are going to be training the data from different sources. So we are not getting it from just we ensure that there is an equal representation of the data sources. So if we are using 10, for example, we get 10 from Hispanic, we get 10 from Africa, we get 10 from all of that. Then the second aspect, which is actually the issue of the data, who is the engineer? So we want to we are going to spend, we are going to have an inclusive team that is actually working as well, so that we will be able to define what does best mean in different categories and different jurisprudence. For example, this is a typical example of what I'm talking about. For someone who graduates 25 and then has 2 years experience in the US, that person may not be the best according to your geography, right? But where I'm from, where in Africa, that is actually the best. So we have this problem of always trying to judge the whole world by using the United States standards, right? And this is one thing that we are going to be overcoming in that particular in this particular system, ensuring that we get the engineers to also understand the implicit biases that exist in their own culture, so that in defining different things we are able to do that inclusively. I think the second response also goes to some way to explain your second question of how do I ensure that I don't have my own implicit biases not coming into the algorithm in itself. So why it won't come in itself is that, one, I am not going to be the only one working as well. I'm going to as much as possible, try to get a much more inclusive team in building from gender to like in a lot of things. So we are the engineering itself is going to be a lot more very inclusive, and you can even see from the team, you can see people from how diverse the team that is already working in. But in broad engineering, we're still going to make sure that we capture that, and we also try to read from other cultures and other backgrounds to understand what the dichotomy that exists in their cultures, so that we'll be able to create some level of representation in it as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ubio.